Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
All right, gentlemen, how's it going? This is your main man, Scot McKay, coming at you with another episode of the MountaintopPodcast.com. Today, we're going to talk about how to stop being generic, like I like to talk about a lot, but most specifically, how to be your outrageous self, how to be a little bit outrageous. And, before you say, hey, I'm going to get fired for that, or women are going to slap me, or I might even get arrested. Yeah, you know what, maybe. I don't know what my guest is going to come up with, but this is his topic, and I'm going to let him run with it, and I'm excited for it personally. His name is he's a doctor of this stuff. Dr. Dane here, right here. Actually, he's not right here. He's east of here in Houston. I'm here in San Antonio. A couple of Texans here going to banter about this stuff. And he is an author, international speaker. He's the founder of International Being You Day, which actually just passed. It's in June. The co-creator of Access Consciousness. And he also wrote another book besides Being You, Changing the World, called Return of the Gentleman. Dr. Dane here. Welcome to the show, man.
Scott, thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure. Your publicist talked a big game. You're very notable worldwide, having done this stuff successfully for a while. So I was excited to get to know you and excited to have you talk about this. So first of all, talk to me about, dealer's choice. Either book, Being You, Changing the World, or Return of the Gentleman. Actually, talk about the latter one first because, I think that's important, but it's not the main topic. So tell us about that book.
Here's the interesting part is there's so much overlap in the idea of today's topic being outrageous, also being you and how that changes things around you. And this idea of Return of the Gentleman. Return of the Gentleman was birthed from having a conversation with some young guys. They were in their 20s. And they said, being around you, I realized that it's okay to be what I actually am. I don't have to put on some image for everybody else. And that was prior to the book, prior to even thinking about a book. And so I started asking them some questions, and I did some deep dive explorations with them and some other guys about what gentlemen needed to hear, what guys needed to hear about what is gonna make things work for them. And so after doing a lot of exploration with a lot of men around the world, I wrote that book. And it's really about being willing to and able, giving you the tools to start to be everything you actually are, not trying to be the image of either the good guy or the bad guy that you think you need to be to either get laid or be successful at work or overcome the opposition that you have in this particular area. It's a totally different perspective on showing up as you are and creating your life from there.
Yeah, I knew when you were going to be a guest on this show that you were going to have a lot in common in terms of your messaging with what we talk about around here. And that's certainly not coincidental because there's a right way and a wrong way to go about this. And certainly being a jerk, thinking that's the way it's going to be, only jerks get women or whatever. Or being this Mr. Nice guy who's manipulative or who perhaps fears loss, anything that's coming from a fear-based place, that's not going to work either. Yet, there's this sweet spot of being a good, decent man who does the right thing even when nobody else is looking, but also who does the hard things because he's got to and no one else is willing. And that's the gentleman. The gentleman is the guy who does right, the guy who respects women. And so I'm thrilled that you wrote that book. And it seems from everything I've read and heard about it that it's right on the money. And I agree with everything you just said about how men should be. To me, that's the essence of masculinity, frankly, is being this virtuous guy who's a provider, protector, presiding over his world. And I love it. Talk to me about the book we're basically launching this entire podcast episode from.
Well, that is, this is the thing, everything that you just said, which is strangely so void, our world seems to be, for the most part, devoid of these conversations where, like you said, the essence of masculinity is to not only be honorable, but powerful, and also not needing to cut off your sexualness and your sexual desire and your willingness to have sex and your willingness to adore women and or men, however you're wired, and the ability. It's where you actually get to step up and be the power in whatever situation you're in. You get to be a source for something different, and that's really what the gift of this is, and in this idea of Return of the Gentleman, gentlemen existed long ago where they would open a door for a lady and they would be there to see whatever contribution they could be, but they also didn't take shit from anyone. They weren't a doormat. And so, I think the conversations that we're having really overlay really well. And so I guess for me, that book, The Return of the Gentleman, is about the tools to get there. Some of it, actually a lot of it being awareness, pointing you to it is not wrong to be your authentic self. And I think that's one of the big things that people listening to this podcast or watching it have probably had as a theme in their lives, where they desire something different. They desire to be something different. But the idea is, if I really be me, I'm probably going to hurt people. I'm going to be seen as a bad person. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be separated from. All these terrible things are going to happen. The actuality is the exact opposite. People are craving somebody authentic nowadays.
We've all been kind of brainwashed into thinking all masculinity is toxic.
Yeah.
I think those voices have died down a little bit in recent years because it was just silly and people got the notion.
Right.
But, the very title of your book, Being You, Changing the World, implies that our authenticity in and of itself will cause us to have a greater impact on those around us, leave the world a better place. Am I onto something there?
Oh, absolutely. And now more than ever, people crave it now more than ever with, of course, the advent of AI and, so many points of view about that, but people can spot that from a mile off at this point. But even the people that are trying to do the status quo, the repetition continuously, it's not generative. And if we're going to actually create our lives and create something different, we're going to have to generate. We're going to have to be generative and creative, not duplicative. And so this idea of being you, changing the world, is the authenticity. And they have done actually several studies, and what they found is, so they were looking at what is the most powerful vibration. And it was like, okay, so they went through all the stuff, the emotions, the fear, the hate, the love, the gratitude, et cetera. And gratitude was big, love was big, but authenticity beat it by a factor of like 50. That was actually the strongest thing, the strongest vibration that they found was authenticity. And that's really what this is about, because we live in a world in which most of us weren't taught, be you, what's true for you. People didn't ask us questions. Hey, what would you like? What's true for you? They sort of tried to put us in a box of what we were supposed to do, or we put ourselves in a box of what we were supposed to do because we didn't want to be those people. And in the case of we men, we didn't want to be those men. And so we've been left with trying to figure out our way in a world that doesn't seem to truly value us unless we value us. And then how do we get there? And that is more about answering that question.
Such an amazing paradox that we've all been trapped into believing in, isn't it? I mean, the American dream is go to college, start at an entry-level business position, claw your way up the corporate ladder. Maybe, it sounds ridiculous to young people in this day and age, buy a house, go figure, have kids. What are you kidding me? Have a dog and retire at age 65, which again, people are saying, you got to be kidding. I'm never going to retire. The company isn't loyal. I'm not loyal to it. There's no such thing as loyalty at all anymore. But that's what we were told to do. But that's not freedom by any stretch. Anytime we're doing what we're told to do, we may as well live in a totalitarian state. And then as it pertains to women and attracting them, if women don't trust us, they don't feel safe with us. And if we're not having the audacity to be who we really are, We're trying to be someone else, or, and I mean, that sounds like a caustic negative thing, that I'm trying to fake my way into being something I'm not. I think we all know that doesn't work. But when we've been duped into living our lives in this box and being the Gen Eric guy I've talked about before, I named him Gen Eric, right?
I love that, by the way.
Yeah, you can steal it. And we show up in front of women and we wonder why women don't trust us. They're not interested because they don't know who we are, because we're not representing who we are. I would go so far to say, Dane, that a lot of guys don't even know who they are because they haven't even workshopped their own identity yet vis-a-vis all of this mess we've allowed ourselves to get into.
Well, I'd say that's actually the biggest part of it. A woman can't trust you if you don't trust yourself. And you can't trust you if you don't have some sense of who you are. And one of the elements I go into in both of those books is there's 5 elements of intimacy. There's honoring, trust, allowance, vulnerability, and gratitude. And trust is trusting that you will make the best choice you can in every situation. Trusting that you will do your damn best. You're not going to be perfect, so you don't even try to require that of yourself, but you trust yourself to know that I will do the best damn job I can in every situation. And so you realize that it's impossible for somebody else to trust us if we don't trust ourselves. But we're also, once again, we're in this catch-22 a lot of times, because the guys that are listening to this podcast who desire to be better men have also bought into, and not even cognitively, it's just part of the underlying hum of reality at this point. They bought into the idea that men are probably the problem and it's probably our fault. You know that age-old philosophical question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, is the man still wrong? Well, the answer is
exactly.
Yes. And so here we are, and we're earnestly trying to do something different. But a lot of it is from the basis that we're trying to do something different based on somehow those of us, the 50% of us that are the seekers of the world, the people I would call the humanoids, the people who are looking to create a different conversation around this, okay? There's about 50% of us as far as I've found. And we seem to be a bit of a different species. We're not wired like the guy who wants to take a woman, take control of her life and control everything and have 30-second sex in which we are only fulfilled. We're not wired that way. We're wired in a different way. Okay. So it's almost like a different species. And so that 50% of us is of the men on the planet are the ones looking and going, wow, I seem to bring an element of wrongness to everything. I'm trying to be a better person, but somehow I need to deal with this idea that somehow because I'm a man, I'm wrong. It's like, you're not wrong because you're a man. You're not wrong, period. That is a lie that we've all bought that we're trying to deal with. But you can't, if you start from a lie, there is nowhere greater that you can go. You've got to recognize the lie and debunk that first, and then start from, okay, if I'm not wrong, what would I choose? If I'm actually, I don't know, even maybe pretty cool, what would I choose? If I'm actually a good guy and a good person, what would I choose and where would that lead me? And how would I look at myself differently that I haven't been able to or willing to so far? Because nobody's ever told me that I may not be wrong.
One thing that I think is worth noting, again, in this context, we've talked about it before, is that the world in real life, human beings, men and women interacting with each other, men interacting with each other, people, humanoids, as you call them, interacting with each other, we're far less socio-political than we are online, or that the online world would make it to be. Back in the Kavanaugh days of him getting confirmed or not to be on the Supreme Court, it was popular to believe all women. Well, now when you have a Democratic Senate candidate who's being accused by women, suddenly we don't believe all women anymore. There's this socio-political agenda surrounding how we as men are being positioned to think about ourselves and about women and about relationships. When in real life, men and women understand ourselves mostly, for the most part, to be in collaboration, not in an adversarial relationship. And we like it that way. And we don't want to see everybody else or anybody else really as an enemy. We all just want to live our lives and get along. And so when we as men embrace virtuous masculinity, after literally years, a generation, not just a decade, but a generation of being told we're toxic for being men, for having XX chromosomes, um, there was never anything to replace the toxicity with. We were just told do better. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. What the heck does that even
Right.
mean? It means nothing other than feel guilt and shame and shut up. And
Totally.
people would even say, sit down, stay in your lane. The future is female. Let the women be in charge, which gave men no place and no identity. And when we're forced into that box, we're even discouraged from reconsidering being toxic. We're just, silenced. And that feels inherently abusive to masculinity. We're like, man, did I just get my balls cut off or what? So this idea of virtuous masculinity, providing, protecting, actually meaning to do well, using our strength to make a world a better place, is something that weirdly just hasn't even occurred to a whole lot of men. And this isn't even age specific. I mean, a lot of guys older have had this whooped out of them. But certainly young guys without really feeling a masculine place in the world, just kind of existing as neuter people, it doesn't sit well with us in our soul, does it, Dane?
No, and I I just want to acknowledge every single point that you just made. It is,
I knew we were going to get along.
yeah, it's exactly that. And so here we are. And the interesting part also, a furtherance of that is that the men that have been silenced in the name of whatever all this is, world goodness, supposedly, creating a better world by all of everything that has been brought up as the replacement for men, supposedly, these are the men that truly have the capacity to make a difference. The ones who truly have the capacity to shape a world that is inclusive of all of us and contributing to all of us. And these are especially the men that have been silenced the most, which is why, of course, you and I wrote the book, why you and I are having the conversation, why you have these conversations, because of exactly that. Because the other guys that are because there's so many concepts to talk about, and my ADHD goes crazy at a moment like this.
We got time, man. Bust them all. We
all
got
right,
it.
let's do it. Okay. So if you look at it, the guys that are listening to this show are willing to step back, shrink into the shadows, stand on the sidelines, because they don't want to be, they're not into the fight. They're not in it for the fight. They're just, why can't we get along? Why can't we have something different? And yet they are simultaneously the guys that, if they add their voice to any conversation, change the conversation for the greater. And this, I think, is what both of us are trying to invite men to that are listening to this. Your voice actually does matter. You may not think so because you've lived in a world in which men are supposedly the problem. Sorry, they're not. And if you could imagine a world in which if we went totally toward the feminine, let's call it, it's not even feminine. The feminine and masculine is also so screwed up in this entire conversation. But if we had a woman in which a woman, there's my ADHD connecting my sentences before I say them. If we had a world in which women were only, the leaders, if we had a matriarchal society, it would look not any different than the extent of intense patriarchy. They're no different because they're separate. There is male and female being separate. There is masculine and feminine being separate. There is no inclusion of beings. It doesn't matter. It's exactly like you said. It doesn't matter whether we're male or female. Most of us just desire to get along successfully and create what we would like to create. And then you have this huge percentage of the population that just wants to shit all over all of it. And they, of course, are the loudest voices. They're the loudest voices online. They're the loudest voices of the people in our lives. There are Karens everywhere. We got to stop listening to the Karens of the world.
More online than in real life.
And acting as though those are the sources. Sorry, what did you say?
I said more online than in real life. I mean, I've heard
so much
that certain pockets like, the Bay Area or New York City, maybe they're more in real life, just like there are online. But for most of the world, everybody really just wants to get along.
So
that
true.
goes for gender, race, politics, all of it.
So true. Yeah, our online world has really given us a skewed version of what we believe the world is like, but then also what we think is the world we need to either avoid interacting with or fight against. But like you said, when you get in front of actual people, it's different. People don't have that need to fight and prove they're right in an in-person conversation nearly as much as they do hidden behind a keyboard being anonymous with their screen, their username.
Yeah, I mean, what the media tells us is built around the loudest people being the most negative and bad news selling. I mean, during the recent World Cup here in the United States, what made news, at least in some circles, was how people from other countries came here and said, well, my goodness, Donald Trump isn't turning this place into a hellscape. This place is actually kind of cool. They got Buc-ee's and ranch dressing. And, I rented a car and got a 4-wheel drive pickup truck, and the women are hot and the food is great and the people are cool and it's beautiful. It's like, go figure.
Yeah.
I'm a world traveler, and virtually every place I've ever been, including North Korea, wasn't as bad as the news made it to be.
Wow.
Now, that doesn't make me an apologist for a totalitarian regime, but I mean, I remember the first time I ever went to Czechoslovakia and the Soviet Union in early 1986. I had grown up thinking everything east of Vienna, Austria is in black and white. It's like a black and white movie, and everybody's just miserable and walking the streets. And I got off the plane in Moscow, and I started meeting kids my own age because they wanted to buy my jeans, because it wasn't really a great place. And to my amazement, they knew a lot more English than I knew Russian. And they said, well, I don't understand why your country is so scared of us and thinks we're the bad guys. You guys have actually dropped nuclear weapons on people before. You've used them. Imagine how we feel. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've never thought about that. Well, of course I'd never thought of that because I'm from America. Now, does that make me a Soviet apologist? Of course not. You got a lot more people emigrating to the United States from other countries than emigrating to Russia. Because even now I visited, 3.5 decades later, and you still can't get Italian food or a Chinese food or good Mexican food in Russia because nobody's emigrating there to cook it. But it all kind of underscores the point you're making. The media has driven a lot of this negativity towards men, which we've bought shockingly, even though we are men. We should know better because this is the life we live. This is the skin we live in. You're telling me I'm a terrible person? I should know better because, after all, here I am. I'm right here. I'm me. I know I'm not a terrible person. But with that message being driven, what it's done is it's caused men to emasculate, be off in the distance. And what happens is when there's no man of the house, the government can step in. And this is how government gets more of a role in our lives. And that's sounding less and less like a tinfoil hat conspiracy the more we move on into this, but that's what happened. So your outrageous self at the baseline level, Dane, is really just daring to be a man again, kinda.
Yeah.
Is that the secret sauce here?
Well, there's so many. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours of about the different aspects of this.
Well, we'll have to have you back for sure.
And deal, but that's a yes, and yet it's what it actually is for us. And like you said, we as men, the interesting part is we as men, all of this stuff that is supposedly done as though it's done by men, those of us that are having the conversation you and I are, that I would say is most of us, it's like all of this stuff is supposedly being done in our name. And it's like, when do we get to be not only cognizant and acknowledging that, okay, it's like you said, I'm not this terrible person. I am not this, but I'm still buying into it because I don't want to be this terrible person. Maybe I'm lying to myself, because this is the other part, is if you're not willing to be the outrageous you, what it means is you still have this hidden judgment that you might be wrong for what you're choosing. Now, and then we have to have the conversation of, because there's a lot of people out there who will just do whatever the hell they want and go, oh, well, of course I'm right because I'm doing this. But that's that other 50% of the population I'm talking about, okay? The humanoid men of the world, the guys that will actually engage in these conversations, the guys that unfortunately have been most affected by the idea that men exist, therefore they are wrong, are the ones who not only have the ability to have a different voice and a different conversation and a different input, but they're also the ones that never want to have the freedom to not be checked because they don't want to do something wrong. They would rather live a small life of self-judgment than hurt somebody else by something they inadvertently or unintentionally said or did. And we need to recognize that within that point of view is a greatness and a strength, because we have such a level of caring for others. But if we don't have that same level of caring for us, if we're not willing to embrace our out of control nature as a gift, we are missing the boat, because we're willing to diminish ourselves as though that will somehow make life better for another, or at least it won't diminish somebody else or hurt somebody else. And we keep walking around looking for, wow, how am I going to hurt someone with what I choose? How am I going to hurt someone with my point of view? How am I going to hurt someone with my lust? How am I going to hurt someone with my love? How am I going to hurt someone with what is true for me that may not be true for them? Oh, I have an idea. Instead of doing any of that, I'll just do what everybody else wants, especially the women in my life. And then I won't hurt anybody. And then I may not be creating my life. I may not be happy. I may really want to die secretly inside, but at least I'm not a bad person anymore.
And what happens is when we do exactly what we think the women want us to do, they're suddenly not attracted to us anymore and put us in the friend zone.
So true. So true. So let's talk about that for a moment, okay? Because I did so much of this over the course of my life. Like so much of being the nice guy, the healer, the one who takes away all the problems, the one who makes everything better for everybody. And I think a lot of men that are, once again, listening to this podcast can relate to that. And what I recognized is there's a way of being that is this outrageousness that we're talking about. And I have not yet found a way of putting it succinctly enough to, at least in my own world, to describe it to people. But it's like if you're willing to be the person that doesn't allow people to conclude what you are, if you leave them with a question, if you make them laugh, if you make them question, if you make them wonder, if you make them doubt, if you make them even, and I probably shouldn't say this, but and I don't mean it in a way they might think, but if you make them even a little bit of afraid for what you might say next, it's like that is when you become a source and a person to be acknowledged and dealt with in their lives. And when I say dealt with, what I mean is you now show up. You're no longer somebody who can fade into the wallpaper and disappear. And yet we keep trying not to do that, even though for most of us, it's way more fun than when we're trying to do the yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am, yes, sir, 3 bags full. Like, I'll do whatever you want. I will always, because the Sorry, the ADHD is very strong. Because the other thing
I can tell this is something you've set a mental trigger for in your life and is part of your frontier. I'm appreciating that.
And it's part of the thing I would like guys to get is let's stop being pussies and turning ourselves down. And when I say being a pussy, I realize, there can be a charge on that also. And I hope people get what I mean by that. Let us be the gentlemen that inspire a different conversation, that open up the world for different choices, and that are there to create different possibilities, because without you, they're not going to exist. With you,
Okay, well, you know
might.
what? Let me jump in here because you said you weren't sure exactly how to put it, but I think what you said was very articulate.
Thank you.
A man who you're referring to is a man to be dealt with. I think what you might be saying is something more in terms of dealt with sounds kind of threatening, like he's a threat.
Exactly.
And we've heard terms like
That's why I
sexual
didn't want to
threat.
say that.
Yeah, which isn't a bad thing. It means a woman's thinking, ooh, he and I might end up getting naked together, which is what sexual threat means. But, he's a man to be reckoned with. He's a man to be considered. He's not generic anymore. He doesn't fade into the background. And further, when you're talking about a man who stops being Mr. Nice Guy and try not to offend the other people and try not to walk on eggshells, what happens is, as a man to be considered and as a man to be reckoned with, it's not like everything that comes out of his mouth is going to be subject to cancel culture. Sure, there may be people who disagree with you, but you're also going to find your tribe. You're going to find your coalition. Importantly, you may be bracing yourself because you're told all women can't stand masculinity and you should shut up and they want to be in charge and all men are terrible and all women are always right. But as you're bracing yourself, a woman's going to go, yes, exactly, that. Where have you been my whole life? You talked about men being pussies. I'll never forget the coaching call I had, and the guy was prompted to finally get a session with me after he was there with a woman watching a movie in the dark, and the woman finally just rolled her eyes and said, kiss me, you pussy. And he realized I was scared. I was chicken to kiss her. I was afraid she would slap me with rape allegations and it would get to my boss and I would be fired the next day. And she didn't have any of that in mind at all. Why? Because he wasn't willing to be his outrageous self and start thinking, hey, maybe this woman might be interested in being kissed. Now, how you go about that, whether you need to physically ask her or you read the room or whatever, I mean, that's the subject of multiple other podcasts we've done. But the point is, sensing that a woman might be sexually attracted, it feels outrageous to a lot of men. I mean, look at the terminology that has been weaponized over the years since, say, third wave feminism. The male gaze. My goodness. What is a heterosexual man to do other than look at an attractive woman? But if we notice she's there, suddenly we're this horrible, evil, terrible person by being heterosexual. No wonder so many men are going non-binary. It's given as the only option. We're not allowed to be attracted to women anymore. We wonder why the birth rate is going down, why people are having less sex, even though, importantly, they're less religious. They have fewer religious reasons not to have sex, yet fewer moral constraints, however you want to put it, and yet they're still having less sex. It's because it now feels outrageous to be a heterosexual man who's sexually attracted to a woman. Meanwhile, the women are out there going, where did all the men go? How come men won't ask me out?
Exactly
Right?
that. Exactly that.
Yeah.
And this is the element that, or one of the elements I really would like men to get is the women are on they have their side where they're desiring us to be this too. We keep
You
thinking
bet.
just us and for men or whatever. No, we are disrupting everything for everyone when we go into this little hermit, friend zone, only this little creature that we keep trying to make ourselves so we don't hurt anybody.
bringing it full circle to what you said before. Here it is, gentlemen. You're going to disgust a certain cross-section of women by being authentically masculine. Fewer than you think. Wait for it. And you're going to disgust even more women by refusing to be a real man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which one, knowing you're going to disgust somebody, you're going to piss somebody off, and you're going to make someone else happy, the only option seems to be, Dane, to be who you want to be, who you feel like you really are. Because the inauthenticity is going to stick it to you no matter what. And I think for most men, they're going to choose, I think I want to be a guy who's attracted to women.
Yep. There you go.
Just saying.
Yeah. And here's the other part. Well, let me just say yes to everything that you just said. And if you can recognize you're going to piss somebody off. Who would you rather piss off?
Exactly.
Do you want to piss off the women that hate men? Here's the weird part. There's a huge percentage of women that hate men, that don't actually like them, but they believe they need them for certain things like babies and money and life and whatever.
Yes, I can't stand all men. They're all liars. They're all terrible. Can you find me a good husband? No.
Yeah.
And now there are a bunch of men who can't stand women.
Yep.
Who are out there trying to get laid, and they're wondering why this woman won't help them close the deal. Well, hello.
Exactly. Yep. That was the other side I was going to mention. And it's helpful if you can see that, because if you can look from your own side and go, okay, am I somebody who actually hates men or hates women, depending on whether you're a woman or a man, or am I not? Then if you're not, if you're a guy who really likes women, what you want to ask for is a woman who really likes men.
Why not?
Yeah, because they're out there and they're wondering where all the men have gone.
This isn't even new. This has been going on for a generation and a half at least now. My online dating profile in the year 2004 read as follows. I believe men are men and women are women, and that's the way it should be. If you agree, read on. And I kid you not, I had nothing but feminine, sweet, adorable creatures who loved men show up in my inbox and respond to my emails. It was great. They were like, I'm so glad you wrote that. And I got even braver. And I said, if you like to get kissed correctly and get kissed off, and you're in the right place, drawing from Gone with the Wind, right? Brett Butler said that. Another movie that you'll never see anymore because it's been canceled, but
exactly,
for different reasons. I had women write me and go, when can I get kissed correctly and kissed often? I can't wait. When do we start? I'm
totally.
Like, wow, really? How come these women don't think they're going to look like sluts by saying this? Well, because you, my friend, I'm saying, this is the little angel and the little devil talking on each shoulder. I could do the Kathleen Madigan and have us talk to each other. So funny. Kathleen Madigan is like the female Ron White. If you've not, guys have never watched her do stand up, give her a chance, even though she's a female comedian. Very funny. And the little angel and the little devil, it's like, well, women who have lots of sex are sluts. So slut shame them. Yeah, but if I slut shame a bunch of women, then they're not going to want to have sex with me because they're going to feel so shamed. It's like, hey, how about this? Women are sexual human beings just like you, and they have a right to a sex life. Maybe don't judge them for it and see what happens. Wow. What an amazing revelation with real results. Yeah.
Well, here, I want to say that what you put on the dating profile is the outrageousness we're talking about. And exactly what you just said right here. That makes
the bar has been set so low for what's outrageous.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Like be anything you actually are. That's outrageous.
Imagine that.
That's it.
Yes.
Boom. But the other thing that you just said, maybe this, women are sexual beings also. Maybe don't judge them for it and see what's up for each person. That should not be outrageous. But in today's day and age, there it is.
Because we've been brainwashed by the media. It all points to don't get married, don't make babies, don't start a family, don't be the man of the house. Neuter everything down and turn everything feminine and get rid of masculine power.
And there's the other side that is about everything is about getting married and falling in love and having babies and having kids. That is the fulfillment of your entire existence and reality. And so anytime we go to, if we can acknowledge media, but we've got to also acknowledge that people are aligning and agreeing with this shit over and over and over, and then perpetrating it on other people. Like, and you mentioned online is a great way of sending the point of view that you just bought from somebody out to masses, but we've got to recognize that there's the one side which we can look at, but then there's also simultaneously the other side that is as much of a trap that is also being perpetrated simultaneously. And we've got to recognize, oh, that's a trap. That's a trap. Okay, not actually true for me. Not actually true. If I were just being a person, I guess that wouldn't actually be true at all. Okay, and how many other traps are there? And when I say trap, I just mean that if we take this, we can acknowledge. Let's do this. Okay, what's true for us makes us lighter. A lie makes us heavier. Anything that's true for us, it makes you lighter. It makes you go, oh God, that feels right. Like when if you haven't been kissed often and kissed correctly, come on over. Like that makes people feel lighter because like, hell yeah, yes, that.
And when a woman responds powerfully to it, your first thought is, where has this been all my years?
Exactly.
What took me so freaking long to get to this? That wasn't so hard.
What took me so long to say what's true for me?
I know, right?
And what took me so long to actually get in touch with what's true for me, which I hope people are at least exploring, as you and I are talking, because that's what this is all about. It's not what's true for Scott and true for Dane. It's what's true for you that you're willing to be outrageous enough to put into the world, because then you'll find your tribe.
Boom,
whoever
there's the mic drop.
In whatever way.
I said, boom, there's the mic drop. I mean, I trust guys weren't tuning into this episode thinking where we're going to be like, all right, you want to be outrageous? Here's how you build a Molotov cocktail and deploy it. We're not about that. This is simply about showing up in your authentic self, being a man, and instead of cringing, straightening up and saying, who's in, who's out.
Yep. And not having a point of view about who's in and who's out, because that is not up to you. That is up to them. We got to let other people choose, but we got to be willing to choose too. In
closing here, before I send these guys to your website, Dane, this has been a fantastic conversation. Yes, you were so coming back. I'm going to coerce you if you're not willing, but you already said you are. So
I am willing. I'm also willing to be coerced. So
all right, well, it can be fun. I have a special message for you guys who are the naysayers. And no matter what positivity I bring to the possibilities of you getting better with women, you say, yeah, but I am not 6 feet tall, don't have six-pack abs, and I'm not making six figures. And this only works for guys who aren't like me. Yeah, welcome to exactly what we're talking about here. This is the exact same kind of drivel you've allowed yourself to believe that is the true toxicity that's keeping you from being your authentic self. I've seen guys who are by no means, in no way, shape, nor form, anything society has told you women should be attracted to, own who they are 1,000%, and they get more women than most other guys. Because that's how important this is.
So true.
I mean, you can't authentically dislike women. You can't authentically never take a shower. There's a little bit of room reading that goes along with this and a whole lot of common sense. But there are multitudes of you gentlemen out there who are doing nothing because you're like, it'll work for everybody else, but not me. Because I've been told I'm not the right kind of guy. You've been controlled. You've been manipulated. That's all there is to it. The outrageous move for you guys would be to show up in your authentic self and give it a shot and stop cringing. Kind of look out into the world and go, oh, wow, that worked out kind of well. It didn't work out any worse than the other plan did, for sure.
Right. Well, here's the weird part. Well, most people are more comfortable with the failure they know than the success they don't.
Oh, that is so true. It's a comfort zone. It's a habit.
Yeah, it's a habit and people love their habits, and then they can complain about it. They can complain about why this didn't work, and then they can have that as part of their life story, and people love their stories. And can I tell a really quick story? It's in the reverse side, but um, I think it may make a point, which is my business partner, his name is Gary Douglas, and he founded this work called Access Consciousness that I've been doing for the last 26 years now. And we were doing a class on sex and relationship. And there was a lady who got up to the microphone to ask a question. And she was about, I'm going to say, probably about 285 pounds. And she was like, nobody will ever want me, and blah, blah, blah. This very thing that you're talking about that so many of us guys do. And by the way, the other thing is, no matter how a guy looks or how much of a six pack or how much of anything, he's still 99% of them, if they're humanoid, they have all those insecurities that you have. You just think you have a better reason for it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, they have a reason they feel is a better reason than yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
Exactly.
whack-a-mole. Yeah.
So, and none of this shit is real. We are making it up in our heads, and that is one of the things that actually help people get over. But, and I'm sure you do also. That's a story for another time. But so this lady was saying that nobody would ever date her, and he went, "Are you kidding?" And Gary said to her, he's like, "Look, there is an ass for every seat. Okay, there are people that like bigger people. There are people that like smaller people. There's somebody who likes what you are."
Some asses require 2 seats, but
some asses.
We digress.
True story. There's an ass for double seats sometimes. And and he said, have you looked at your cleavage? And she was like, no, what are you talking about? And she had this amazing cleavage. She had these really big boobs. And within a few minutes of talking to her about she didn't have to buy all this crap, he was like, look, what if you just go through the world being you and actually start enjoying your body? You created it this way for a reason. Why don't you stop using it as a source of judgment and see who might be attracted to you?
Or if she doesn't like her weight, do something about it. Because she doesn't like it.
That was the other option, but she actually didn't have a problem with her weight, which is interesting. And we were in the same town a month later. It actually happened to be Houston, which is interesting, before I lived here. And she came to the class and she went, oh my God, you are a wizard. And my friend Gary's like, what are you talking about? She said, I have had more sex in the last month than I had in my first 35 years. She's like, I walk down the street and I have people throwing phone numbers out of their car to see if I will have sex with them. She's like, she's like, and Gary's like, well, what'd you do? She went, I just changed my friggin' point of view. I stopped acting like I couldn't get sex and I started asking for it. I'm getting it all the time now. Now, that sounds like such a simplistic story. And it is, if there's a testimonial on a website, they give you the big story, the thing that really worked. But I've seen that and versions of that thousands of times by people simply changing their point of view and starting to look from a different place, but nobody's ever told them they could.
It all starts with a yes and instead of a yeah but.
Yep.
Always.
Absolutely.
I think it's brilliant. I love the story. And the reason why I love that story is because I can just feel the wheels turning inside guys' minds about everything that's wrong with that story. Oh, totally. She shouldn't be out there begging for sex. She's like a slut. Or it was all about the sex. See, it was all about the sex. She's deciding who she's having sex with and who she's not. Or, well, yeah, because even women who are 3s out of 10 can get laid, and I still can't, even though I'm practically perfect and women still can't stand me. It's always a no but, or yeah, well, it works for someone else and not me. It's all about the mindset.
Yep.
The number one differentiator between men who are successful with women and men who aren't is they believe they should be successful with women. It's confidence.
Yep.
Right up there in the rearview mirror in second place nowadays is actually liking women. Okay. That needs to be said more than ever. But I love the story. I love the work. I love what you're doing. And guys, first of all, you can get Dr. Dane Heer's books, Being You, Changing the World, and Return of the Gentleman, when you go to my Amazon influencer page at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon. And at the top of the page, you'll see both Dr. Dane Heer's books. If you're listening or watching this podcast within just a few days or a week or so of its release, Also, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Dane, D-A-I-N, guess what? You're the first Dane we've ever had on the show, D-A-I-N.
Yes.
And sweet.
Success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you were able to get your domain too. That was well done. Dr. Dane here is a domain.
Much.
But when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Dane, D-A-I-N, you will go to that website, and what will they find there, Dane?
There is so much to contribute to you, wherever the heck you are in your journey, whatever you want to change. The thing is so I do something called Access Consciousness. And basically it's a set of tools, techniques, and ancient wisdom that allows you to start creating the miraculous life that you always knew should be possible, that you haven't been able to create yet. It's tools that work in the trenches of life. And there are so many things, and there are so many things that are free. My gift to you. There's one called Waking Up Miraculously, for example. Start every day with it. I have people telling me I do this I haven't had a bad day since I started using this. And it's that sort of stuff. It's along the lines of the conversations that we've had. But it's about you getting in touch with the ease of actually living your best life rather than trying to create something somebody else out there has no idea about you, but you keep trying to emulate.
We're followers, and then we wonder why it's so complicated.
Right?
That.
It's time to be a leader in your own life.
When you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Dane, that's what you'll find. Dr. Dane here. What a great conversation, man. And yes, you're absolutely welcome to come back. I fully expect you will, and we'll have more great conversations along these lines. Thank you so much for being here today, man.
Appreciate it, Scott. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And guys, if you haven't visited Origin in Maine, Jocko Willink's company recently, or the guys at Hero Soap, or the guys at the Keyport, use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 to get 10% off when you partake of anything from our 3 longtime sponsors. And check it out, guys. If you haven't gotten your hands on Flip the Switch, 5 ways to get better with women right now, you can get that for free when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com. And when you sign up for my free newsletter, which is fluff free every day, helps you be better as a man, get better with the women. That's what you'll get instantaneously, instant access when you sign up. A lot of that stuff is there for you and more when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.